You were born in the quaint little community of Riverwood, where your father named you Medina after his grandmother. You had a stable childhood, if not a little boring, at least in your mind, but it was still filled with wonderful memories of playing with your childhood friends in the river, spending holidays with your family, and dreaming of the days when you would start your own family. Growing up in a family that was so tightly knit and stable gave you a strong family instinct. As you grew older and entered your teens, especially your later teens, you became well aware of the different way that your childhood friends had started acting differently towards you. You weren't naive as to the reason that this was, as you yourself had started having similar feelings as well. But you couldn't bring yourself to start viewing any of them as a potential suitor. You couldn't get beyond how you ultimately would not move past seeing them as your lifelong friends, as one would see a brother. So ultimately, this drove a wedge between yourself and your childhood friends, and you had forced yourself to start keeping them at arm's length, if for no other reason than the uncomfortable tensions everyone had started feeling. And as a result, you started feeling lonely, as you couldn't understand why your lifelong childhood friends couldn't just be your friend, rather than trying to move that relationship into something you just couldn't feel comfortable with, no matter how much your yearning for starting a family of your own was consuming you more and more every day. One day, while working in your garden, you heard a horse walking up the path behind you, and as you turned around, you were taken aback by the young man sitting atop the regal steed. As he approached and your eyes locked and he smiled at you, your heart melted, and you knew at that moment that you had fallen in love. It was a feeling you had never experienced, and it hit you like a runaway carriage. He stopped in front of you and dismounted his horse. As he walked up to you, you felt your heart start to flutter and skip beats. He introduced himself as Rohir, and he was traveling up from Falkreath as he had heard about a home and some land that was for sale here in Riverwood, and if you could give him directions. You knew exactly the place he was referring to, as the place was the home you grew up in, but had to put up for sale when your parents had passed away and you couldn't afford the upkeep on, and you decided to move to a smaller, more manageable place for a single person. You gave him the directions and told him who to talk to about purchasing questions if he was interested. As he rode away, he turned back and smiled at you, and your heart melted, and knew this was the one you had been praying for. It just had to be. The next day, there was a knock on your door. As you opened it and saw Rohir standing there smiling, you couldn't hold back the blush. I have come to make an offer on your home. You are selling. You know you could have told me yesterday you were the seller, he said with a smirk that said silly you all over it. You explained why you were selling the home and what you were asking for it. I tell you what, he said. I came here this morning to make an offer on what I would be willing to pay, but if I must be honest, I would like to change that offer. As you met his eyes and saw the playful look on his face, your curiosity piqued. He proceeded. The offer I would like to put on the table is as follows. First, take that home off the market and put this home up for sale. He then reached out and took your hand in his. After that, I will purchase your childhood home for whatever your asking price is. He then got on his knee. If you agree to marry me and move into that home as my wife. You couldn't believe what you had just heard, and with a quivering voice you said yes, yes, of course you would marry him. The marriage was wonderful, more than you could ever have hoped for, more than your childhood dreams had ever imagined. And within 5 years, you had 2 beautiful children whom you loved with all your heart, a beautiful home in your childhood community, and a husband you loved more and more with each passing day. But things started changing. Rohir was becoming distant. He was away from home more than he was home, and it had evolved into where even when he was home, he rarely spoke to you but merely spent time with his kids, and completely neglected or even acknowledged you anymore. One day you were down near the river with the kids, letting them skip rocks and play while you tried to take your mind off the pain you were feeling. You could hear a horse walking up the path towards where you were sitting, and as you looked up, you could see Rohir riding up. As he got off the horse and walked over to say hi to his kids, completely ignoring you, you saw there was another woman on the horse that was behind him. He finished saying hi and hugging and kissing his kids, got back onto the horse without even looking at you, and rode off. You sat there in utter shock for what seemed an eternity. The laughing and splashing of the kids drew your attention. As you saw them, you snapped. Filled with nothing but pure jealousy at the affection they got from Rohir and the anger that was rushing through you, you snatched up the kids and threw them into the river, where they quickly succumbed to the quickly flowing water. You snapped out of it almost instantly and realized what you had done. You jumped in to save your children. When you hit your head on a rock you didn't see and went unconscious and drowned as well. You were born Medina and grew up into the most beautiful woman the Hold had ever seen. Now you have been born into this world once again as La Llorona, cursed to wander the river banks and streams, wailing and crying out for your lost children. La Llorona, Weeping Woman of the Southwest. The legend of La Llorona, Spanish for the Weeping Woman, has been part of Hispanic culture in the Southwest since the days of the conquistadors. The tall, thin spirit is said to be blessed with natural beauty and long flowing black hair. Wearing a white gown, she roams the rivers and creeks, wailing into the night and searching for children to drag screaming to a watery grave. No one really knows when the legend of La Llorona began, or from where it originated. Though the tales vary from source to source, the one common thread is that she is the spirit of a doomed mother who drowned her children and now spends eternity searching for them in rivers and lakes. La Llorona, christened Maria, was born to a peasant family in a humble village. Her startling beauty captured the attention of both the rich and the poor men of the area. She was said to have spent her days in the humble peasant surroundings, but in the evenings she would don her best white gown and thrill the men who admired her in local fandangos. The young men anxiously awaited for her arrival, and she reveled in the attention that she received. However, La Llorona had two small sons who made it difficult for her to spend evenings out, and often she left them alone while she cavorted with the gentlemen during the evenings. One day the two small boys were found drowned in the river. Some say they drowned through her neglect, but others say that they may have died by her own hand. Another legend says that La Llorona was a caring woman full of life and love, who married a wealthy man who lavished her with gifts and attention. However, after she bore him two sons, he began to change, returning to a life of womanizing and alcohol. After leaving her for months at a time, he seemingly no longer cared for the beautiful Maria, even talking about leaving her to marry a woman of his own wealthy class. When he did return home, it was only to visit his children, and the devastated Maria began to feel resentment toward the boys. One evening, as Maria was strolling with her two children on a shady pathway near the river, her husband came by in a carriage with an elegant lady beside him. He stopped and spoke to his children, but ignored Maria, and then drove the carriage down the road without looking back. After seeing this, Maria went into a terrible rage, and turning against her children, she seized them and threw them into the river. As they disappeared downstream, she realized what she had done and ran down the bank to save them, but it was too late. Maria broke down into inconsolable grief, running down the street screaming and wailing. The beautiful La Llorona mourned them day and night. During this time, she would not eat and walked along the river in her white gown searching for her boys, hoping they would come back to her. She cried endlessly, and she roamed the river banks, and her gown became soiled and torn. When she continued to refuse to eat, she grew thinner and appeared taller until she looked like a walking skeleton. Still a young woman, she finally died on the banks of the river. Not long after her death, her restless spirit began to appear, walking the banks of the Santa Fe River when darkness fell. Her weeping and wailing became a curse of the night, and people began to be afraid to go out after dark. She was said to have been seen drifting between the trees along the shoreline, or floating on the current with her long white gown spread out upon the waters. On many a dark night, people would see her walking along the riverbank and crying for her children, and so they no longer spoke of her as Maria, but rather La Llorona, the Weeping Woman. Children are warned not to go out in the dark, for La Llorona might snatch them, throwing them to their deaths in the flowing waters. Though the legends vary, the apparition is said to act without hesitation or mercy. The tales of her cruelty depends on the version of the legend you hear. Some say that she kills indiscriminately, taking men, women, and children, whoever is foolish enough to get close enough to her. Others say that she is very barbaric and kills only children, dragging them screaming to a watery grave. When Patricio Lugan was a boy, he and his family saw her on a creek between Mora and Guadalapita, New Mexico. As the family was sitting outside talking, they saw a tall, thin woman walking along the creek. She then seemed to float over the water, started up the hill, and vanished. However, just moments later she reappeared much closer to them, and then disappeared again. The family looked for footprints, and finding none, had no doubt that the woman they had seen was La Llorona. She has been seen along many rivers across the entire Southwest, and the legend has become part of Hispanic culture everywhere. Part of the legend is that those who do not treat their families well will see her, and she will teach them a lesson. Another story involved a man by the name of Epifanio Garcia, who was an outspoken boy who often argued with his mother and his father. After a heated argument, Epifanio, along with his brothers Carlos and Agustin, decided to leave their ranch in Ojo de la Vaca to head toward the Via Real de Santa Fe. However, when they were along their way, they were visited by a tall woman wearing a black tapelo and black net over her face. Two of the boys were riding in the front of the wagon when the spirit appeared on the seat between them. She was silent, and it continued to sit there until Epifanio finally turned the horses round and headed back home, at which time she said, "I will visit you again someday when you argue with your mother." During my travels to New Mexico, I visited with a very friendly Hispanic gentleman who I asked if he believed in La Llorona. He wholeheartedly confessed that he did, and was very open about his cultural beliefs. However, when I asked him if he believed in ghosts, he stated that he did not. In Santa Fe, New Mexico, the tall wailing spirit has been seen repeatedly in the PERA building, which is the Public Employees Retirement Association, which is built on land that was once an old Spanish Indian graveyard and is near the Santa Fe River. Many people who have been employed there tell of hearing cries resounding through the halls and feeling unseen hands pushing them while on the stairways. La Llorona has been heard at night wailing next to the rivers by many, and her wanderings have grown wider. Following Hispanic people wherever they go, her movements have been traced throughout the Southwest and as far north as Montana in the banks of the Yellowstone River. The Hispanic people believe that the Weeping Woman will always be with them, following the many rivers looking for her children, and for this reason many of them fear the dark and pass the legend from generation to generation. Hey guys, Tat here. Welcome to my channel. Hope you're all having a wonderful day. Alright, so what we got going on here is a character build, which is my take on the La Llorona urban legend whole thing for here in Skyrim. So yeah, I've been wanting to do this build for a while, all the way back when I played this on the 360 a lot, and I could never make her to where I was happy with her until I started playing the game on PC, and of course with mods and stuff I was able to get a pretty good facsimile of what I envisioned the whole La Llorona urban legend to be. So yeah, I hope you enjoy this, so go ahead and sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. Alright, roll the intro. All right, so let's just go ahead and jump right on into this. Um, yeah, so this is my my take on the whole La Llorona, I guess you could say like urban legend or not really wives' tale. I guess you just call it like an urban legend. I grew up in New Mexico, so I'm very familiar with this whole legend of La Llorona and stuff, and I wanted to do a build based on that. And I had the idea of it way back when I used to play this game a lot on the 360. I just couldn't I couldn't come up with one that actually I was happy with or whatever, because there's just your options were too limited. But of course now on the PC and with mods and stuff, I was able to get something that I was happy with to represent, my vision of La Llorona. So yeah, this is La Llorona. I guess we're just gonna go ahead and just jump right on into the build here and all the skills and spells and shouts and all that kind of stuff, and just jump right on into it. Then we'll go ahead and run through Rolbathar here. I was working on the Ethereum quest, so you got to go through here to get the third Ethereum shard. So I figured I'd just go ahead and do something a little bit different than the other builds, which was um, what is that? That one fort down there by the Western Watchtower. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but I usually did that whole area and stuff for the build. But I figured I'd go ahead and do something different here. But yeah, let's just go ahead and jump right into the build here. The race that I chose for her is actually an Altmer, because if you remember from the history, when I read the history of it, of the legend and stuff, she was a really tall woman with long flowing black hair. So of course the tallest race in Skyrim is the Altmers. So yeah, you're gonna want to do Altmer, and for the height, and just make her as skinny as possible, because it had said how she got really skinny and was almost like a skeleton because she wasn't eating. So yeah, for the appearance, well, let me see what I'm gonna do here right off the bat is take off the ghost effect so we could actually see her a little bit better here. Yeah, on the appearance, the hair that I used is KS hairdos. Um, she's got some purple on the bottom. I totally had forgotten to take off the multicolored hairs for KS hairdos. So really, you wouldn't want to have that on there because she wouldn't have, some dyed hair and stuff like that. But um, this is a nice long flowing hairstyle. Of course, it's black. Um, the clothes is just the beggar's clothes, because she had her white gown or robe or whatever was getting really tattered up and everything from just roaming along the riverbanks. So I thought that really suited well. The eyes are from the eyes of Aber. Of course, I gave her a scar all along the right side of her face there, and that was to represent when she had struck her head on the rock when she had jumped into the river. So she, hit the side of her face there and knocked herself out, and that's why I gave her a big scar along the side of her face there. Um, it looks like she's without any kind of shoes or gloves or anything, but actually she does have them on. So we'll go ahead and go into the gear right here. Let's see. You're gonna need the Mace of Moloch ball, but you're not gonna use it. And we'll get into that more when we get into the more of the skills and stuff. This staff, I had just found this off an enemy or something, and I was going to give it a try just because I was curious about the whole the mind vision thing, and I just wanted to check it out. It has nothing to do with this build, and it's just still sitting in my inventory. But yeah, you're going to need the Mace of Moloch ball, but you're not going to use it really. Okay, so for her gear, again, I went with Bonehawk amulet and Bonehawk rings. So on the amulet, we have being struck by a fire, frost, or shock spell or effect reduces damage from that element by 44% for 5 seconds. And then we have 3% chance per second to restore 192 points of health, magicka, and stamina. And then grants 50% resistance to all magic. So I used the miracle enchantment on the amulet there. And the first two enchantments come from Summer Mist, and then of course the 50% resistance to magic is vanilla. On the ring we have absorb health based on level from enemies within 19 feet and grants another 31% resistance to all magic. And then the other ring is absorb stamina based on level from enemies within 19 feet and grants 31 resistance to all magic. You want, for this build, you're going to want to get your magic resistance very, very high. If you're going to be using the Imperious racials, the Imperious races of Skyrim, which I'm using, and I highly recommend you use it, because for the Altmers, when the stamina, or I believe health also, but I know stamina magicka, if they drop below 50%, their regeneration rate goes up by like 100%, but you lose. It's I want to say 250 armor, or it may only be 100 armor, and you lose 50% resistance to magic while it's doing that ramped up regeneration. So if you're sitting at cap of like 85% magic resist and you drop your stamina below half, and that boosted up regeneration kicks in, you're going to lose 50% of your magic resistance, which is going to bump you down to only 35. So I would suggest trying to get your magic resistance as high as you can possibly get it, even if it's like, 130% or something, even though cap is only 85%. But that way, if you drop below half and you lose that 50% resistance, you're still going to be sitting at a high enough magic resist. So yeah, you're going to want to keep your magic resistance as high as you possibly can. The nose piercing, we have gains 37 soul energy when a living foe dies, and grants the soul burst power at 1,000 soul energy. That comes from Summer Mist, and basically whenever enemies die, you're going to gain 37 soul energy, basically. And when it reaches 1,000, you get a power in your lesser powers, and you can equip that and hit the button, and it sounds a lot like a burst. It's a radial burst. And it does a lot of damage. It's something like 600 and something damage, it's pretty damaging. The other enchantment, there's another enchantment on the nose ring here, and it's not showing up on the card right there, but it is the enchantment that gives me the ghost effect, and that comes from a mod. I don't remember what it's called, but of course it will be linked in the description, and it's basically gives you a ghost effect. Now, if you notice she has a ghost effect where she's kind of really transparent, and she doesn't look like a Skyrim ghost, which is like a blue thing. Now, when you first equip this, like I'll do it right now, she's going to be blue like that. See, she looks like a normal Skyrim ghost. Now, what I found is a side effect. I don't know if it's something that was overlooked in the mods or whatever, but when your flesh spell kicks off, you turn you lose that blue hue to you, and you turn just like transparent, basically. And even after your flesh spell goes away, you maintain that really transparent look, which I was really happy with because it looks really cool. She's very, very transparent. She doesn't have this blue hue to her, so that's why she looked like that for the most part. And it stays that way unless you take off the piece of equipment that has the enchantment. But as soon as my flesh spell kicks off here, she'll turn that invisible color and she'll lose that blueness, which is really neat. So let's see here. Okay, we got on the ears 19% chance to reduce the cooldown of your shouts to 3 seconds, and grants 31 resistance to magic. See, I was bumping up my magic resist more. The other earring is take 19% less damage from attacks when your health falls below 25%, and take up to 39% less damage from enemy attacks the further their health falls below 50%. Those are Summer Mist enchantments. The reducing the cooldown of your shouts is Summer Mist, and of course the resistance to magic is vanilla. Now, another thing that I have noticed the more I've played her, and this would be totally up to you, but you may consider, unless you want to try to enchant something else, but you may consider taking off this soul energy burst power, because you don't really use it that often, but it's nice to use it when you get it, but you don't use it too often. And you may consider taking that off and actually putting on another chance to reduce your cooldown of your shouts to 3 seconds, because the fact that she is La Llorona, which is she's the wailing woman, she's, you know, she's crying, she's wailing, she's screaming basically. So as you can probably figure out, her main attacking is I wanted, you know, her main attacks to be shouts. So I deliberately kept the spells damage down lower so that I wouldn't be killing things with the spells. So just because her main shout is the wail of the banshee, and that means with all 3 words, any enemies that are under half health, they're going to instantly die. So I would try to build her just right to where you can get enemies health down to about 0.5% fairly easily without overdoing it and killing them too quick. Because I wanted it to where her main way of killing enemies was by basically wailing at them, by screaming at them like a banshee. So you may consider maybe getting rid of this enchantment because it's not used too often, and putting on another chance to reduce your shout cooldown. Because the fact that I'm just using shout so much, I'm finding that I'm running into longer cooldowns a lot more often than I would like. As we go through this dungeon, you'll probably see that. So that's just a little tip that you may want to play around with and see if it's something you want to switch up in the build. Excuse me, sorry about that. The ragged robes is take 46% less attack damage while casting a spell, and again, her main spell that she's going to use when she's using a spell is going to be a channeling spell. So you'll take 46% less attack damage while you are channeling that spell, and then another 3% chance to restore 154 points of health, magicka, and stamina. Now, the next 2 here, we've got boots and gloves, which you can't see, Hunter, but you can see that they are actually invisible, and that comes from a mod that it makes the armor pieces invisible. Basically, I was kind of hoping that when she was in ghost form, that when she was wearing these invisible things, that it would actually make like her feet and stuff disappear, so that it would give her more of an illusion of kind of like floating like a ghost. But it doesn't. You can see her feet. It still looks really cool because, you know, you get the 2 slots here on each of the pieces of equipment, so you still have some more enchantments here, but you don't have to see the equipment. So she's got that, you know, barefoot and no gloves look. So that really is really cool. So that comes from a mod called Invisible Armors. But on the hands here, we have gains 47 soul energy when a living foe dies. That's another one just like the one on the nose piercing. And that's the reason why I had to, was just to build that soul energy up quicker. But again, you could take one of them off and give yourself a more shout cooldown, which may actually be better. And on the boots, we've got you move 19% faster, and it negates all falling damage. So I wanted to give her that cushioned enchantment, because I mean, she's a ghost, so she wouldn't be getting hurt if she's jumping off of something high, basically. So she can move a little bit quicker here, and she doesn't have to worry about falling off of anything high. It's not going to hurt her. So yeah, that's all that gear right there. These are just scrolls that I had picked up. I was going to give them a try, and I haven't gotten around to it yet. Of course, I'm fairly far along there, and I've got those Elder Scrolls. But yeah, you can see we've got a couple of the shards. We're working on the 3rd one here, so we'll do that. Excuse me again. So yeah, that's all her gear. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and look at spells and shouts and powers. and then we'll just go ahead and jump right on in here and get into running through this dungeon here. So what we've got going on is let's see, champion of kind, pierced ears, boots. Again, I'm using the new winter winter sun, I believe, yeah, winter sun mod for religion, and I chose Molag Bal because this power right here, when you become a devotee, which means once you get over 100% favor with whoever you're worshiping, the devotee of Molag Bal, you get this power right here, which is you activate a person in combat to banish them to Coldarbour. You meditate to request the items, and it costs 15% favor. And the reason why I chose that one is because of the whole thing of how La Llorona, how she would basically snag you up, kidnap you basically. And I figured this one suited really well because you can activate a person and basically kidnap them. It kidnaps that person and they just disappear. They are now in Coldarbour. And then when you meditate, all the items that they had on them get put into your inventory. So that's why I chose Molag Bal. Um, Another one, of course, that would work really well would be if you worshipped Talos, which would really help with your shouts. And again, because she's so shout centric, that it would really help to have that also. But I wanted to try to give her a little power where she could snag things up, kidnap things, because that's the whole thing about La Llorona is you don't, you gotta watch out. I grew up in New Mexico, and I grew up with this legend and stuff like that. And I guess maybe in other parts of the country they have what's called the ditch witch, I think. Or maybe that's just a thing that is around here. It's called the ditch witch, which it's something where parents and everything would use it to scare their kids to not go near ditches, basically, and where they could accidentally fall in. And they would say that don't go near the ditches and stuff because the ditch witch might get you. And the ditch witch is based off of La Llorona, and of course around here we'd always be told, don't go near the ditches or the river, because I lived right next to the Rio Grande River, and don't go near the river and stuff like that because La Llorona, and of course that I was a kid and everything, and you start believing this stuff. Now I'll tell you right now that when I was young, I was probably maybe 5 years old or something, I saw La Llorona. Now I'm going to tell you right now, I do not believe in ghosts at all. So I do distinctly remember seeing La Llorona on the near the water and stuff. And what I put that to, or what I basically in my mind, how I figure that is because I was so young and we were always told these stories that my imagination probably just made me think that I was seeing something, and the memory just stuck. Basically, it just stuck. And because I don't believe in ghosts or anything like that, I never have. So I don't believe that I really saw her or anything. I think that it was just because of your friends and your neighbors, and everybody always talked about it around here. So I think that my young child imagination probably made me think that I saw her at the ditch, and stuff like that. But I don't think it was actually real or anything like that, of course. But yeah, around here, it's a little bit different than the thing that I found online that I read at the intro of basically her backstory and stuff like that. And it wasn't so much that she was, or at least how we grew up in hearing this story, it wasn't so much that she was trying to kidnap kids to throw them into the river to kill them. What it was that she was so grief stricken over losing, over her own children and stuff like that, that she's kind of cursed to wander, the ditches and the river and all that kind of stuff, because she's always crying and stuff. She's in grief, and she's looking for kids that she can kidnap because she wants to replace her own kids. That's the part of the legend, how I grew up with it and how I was always told it. I had never heard this thing where she was, trying to capture, kids or anybody so she could throw them in the river and kill them. It was that so she could kidnap you and basically keep you for herself to replace her own children, is what it was. So again, that's why I had picked Molag Bal here, because it's got a thing where you can kidnap somebody, and basically snag them up and kidnap them. So yeah, that's why I chose that one. Um, Elven Supremacy comes from the Imperious, and attaining level 100 in a skill increases the effectiveness of that skill by 10%. And of course, for the Wail of the Banshee comes from Thunder. Oh, I can't even remember what it's called. Thunderchild, the shout one, and I chose the pillar for empowering Wail of the Banshee because that's her main go-to thing. So with your full Wail of the Banshee shout, has its cooldown reduced by 25 seconds for each target that it kills. So that's with all three words. When you choose the pillar for Wail of the Banshee, you get the empowered Wail of the Banshee. Worshipper of Molag Bal, you absorb 15 magicka and stamina per second based on favor with Molag Bal from nearby enemies in combat. And of course, with the stamina, I have a stamina absorption already enchantment, so I get stamina back pretty quick. I wanted to keep stamina being able to regenerate as fast as possible so that I didn't have it getting under that 50% mark very often, and if it would get right back up, because then you don't lose your armor and magic resistance when it's low like that. 15% magicka. She is a Vancian. I'm using Vancian in this, so magic absorption or magicka lost isn't really a factor for this build. The Blessing of Molag Bal, the destruction spells cost 10% less to cost. Again, that doesn't affect us because we don't use magicka, but whenever you meditate at Molag Bal's shrine, basically, it helps get your favor with him up quicker. And there's only one shrine to Molag Bal in the whole game that's added by Winter Sun, and that is inside the castle Volkihar. So, let's see. Gold and glass. Magicka. Okay, here's that one I was talking about. Magicka and stamina regenerates up to 100% faster below half. As regeneration increases, your armor decreases by up to 100 points, and magicka resistance by up to 50 points. So that's why I've wanted to get a lot of stuff in there to keep that stamina above the 50% mark, because I don't want to be losing that 100 points of armor and 50 points of magic resistance. Let's see, what else do we got here? The stone that we're using is the Lover Stone. I chose the Lover Stone just for the fact that for this one, well, we'll get down to it, but the one where if you die, the lover will bring you back once every 15 minutes. And I figure because she's a ghost, you really shouldn't be dying again. So I wanted to try to make it to where the deaths with this character were at a bare minimum. So I just chose the Lover Stone so that if I do get killed, I get brought back right away and it's like I didn't die. Shimmering Threads, again, this is an Ultimate thing with Imperious. Weapons and armor are 15% weaker, but enchantments on them are 15% stronger. Worshipper of Molag Bal, slay people who stand in your way, trap souls in my name, live as a vampire, which she is not a vampire, so you're not going to get favor for that, and never seek a cure. Those skilled in destruction are more deserving of my favor. So you're going to be able to get favor with Molag Bal through being skilled in destruction, which she is very skilled in destruction, slaying people that stand in your way. Of course, you're slaying people all the time. And this one right here is why I said that you need to have the Mace of Molag Bal. So you need to get that as soon as you can, because trap souls in my name. If you remember the Mace of Molag Bal, one of the enchantments on it is a soul trap. So if you kill an enemy with that and trap a soul, it gets the favor up. And I was having a really hard time trying to get favor up to 100%. So because I wasn't a vampire and stuff, so it was really slow going, and you lose favor really quickly. So I found out by trial and error that you get a lot of favor by trapping souls with the Mace of Molag Bal. So all I did was I got the mace and everything, and through the console I would just spawn in like 4 or 5 bandits and then just kill them right away. I would just console me in some black soul gems, some empty ones, and just trap 4 or 5 bandit souls right away. and it made my favor with Molag Bal get up there really quickly, because the key for being a worshiper of Molag Bal is, of course, that thing where you can kidnap people by activating them in battle, and you don't get that power until you're at 100% favor with Molag Bal. And again, I was having a really hard time getting it up there. It may go quicker if she was a vampire, but she's not a vampire, so yeah, you're gonna need the mace for that. And I would just suggest just using the console and just just trapping a whole bunch of just spawn some bandits in, trap them with the mace, spawn some more in, trap them with the mace, and get yourself to that 100% as quickly as you can so that you can use that skill. So yeah, that's why you don't really use the mace, but you'll use it to get your favor up. Let's see what else. See the Lover's Stone here. To cheat death when slain, returning to life with full health. This effect has a 15-minute cooldown. That's why I chose the Lover's Stone. Again, she's a Vancian. She's got Vancian magic. And that's it for those. So for powers, we've got contingency here. Contingency is a racial that you get with Imperius. And after each race has a different thing that you have to do in order to get their special power, basically. And the Ultimer's special power is contingency. And basically what that does is it stores your equipped spells into a magical matrix and casts those spells for free whenever a chosen condition is met. So it's kind of a lot like Okado's Recital. And what you do to get contingency is you have to collect 40 butterfly wings. So you need to capture 20 butterflies. And what you do, what the ones that I chose here is I put the spell tree rings. No, not tree rings. I chose what was it? Healing Blossom. I put Healing Blossom in one hand, and then I put Grand Healing in the other. And then you go down here and you equip it like that. Of course, it's a power, and then you hit your power button, and it asks you, you start scrolling through different conditions, and you choose which one you want to be the trigger for those two spells to go off. And it can be like when you enter combat, or when you shout, when your health falls below 25%, which is the one that I chose. When your health goes below 25%, Healing Blossom and Grand Healing will trigger. It could be when your stamina falls below a certain level. There's a whole bunch of different conditions that you can choose. And again, I chose when health falls below 25%. So when her health gets knocked below 25%, right away Grand Healing is going to trigger, and that's going to heal you up. And of course, Healing Blossom triggered, and Healing Blossom is after 10 seconds, you start getting healing off of Healing Blossom. So that was kind of like an emergency thing to try to keep me from dying, basically. Let's see what else. Meditation is just for to be able to meditate to whoever it is, in this case Molag Bal. And then of course here is Soul Burst. It's a 485, not 600 something. That's the one from that enchantment. So after you get 1,000 points of soul energy, you can equip this right here and then hit your power button, and it's a psychic shockwave basically that does 485 points of magic damage and throws targets into the air. Spells. Curse I don't use very often. I'll sometimes use it against dragons, just so that when they're hitting me with something, it can start wearing their health down a little bit. Because again, the main thing that I wanted for this build was to try to kill things as much as possible with the Wail of the Banshee. So just trying to get things down to that under halfway health mark. Excuse me. Drain Vitality is one of the key shouts that you're going to use besides Wail of the Banshee. And of course, that just sucks out magicka, stamina, and health from your enemies. We all know how Drain Vitality works. Evocation has it's like a firestorm spell, like the master level destruction firestorm. You'll see it when we go through the spells, but that's what I have in evocation, and it's going to be a lot like that Soul Burst. It's just like a radial nova that just nukes everybody around you, basically. Soul Tear, the one you get from Durnavir, I was using that instead of Drain Vitality. I was using that to be the thing to knock things down under half health before I wail the Banshee them. But what I was finding is Soul Tear is just so strong that a lot of times it was killing the enemies, and of course with all three words, then it gives you a zombie, and it's like that really isn't what La Llorona is. She's not out there like a necromancer raising zombies and stuff. So that's when I had switched over to use Drain Vitality. You'll see that in this dungeon right here, we're going to use Soul Tear a lot, because the main weakness for this build is Dwemer automatons, because most of the stuff that you have for offensive things does not affect Dwemer automatons. I don't think Drain Vitality affects them. I know Wail of the Banshee doesn't affect them, so even when they get knocked out at half health, that doesn't kill them. And they're kind of like fire spells, are your main ones. They're kind of like fire spells. They aren't too good against robots basically either. So Soul Tear seemed to do a pretty good job against them. So I still use it for the Dwemer automatons. Let's see, for the healing, just the grand healing in your contingency. The healing blossom in your contingency, it activates 10 seconds after casting and lasts 10 seconds. The blossom heals the caster 60 points per second. Let's see. That was just something I had found and I was going to use. I wanted to try it, but I didn't like the way it was working for the build. And then, of course, tree rings. I use tree rings with Okado's recital so that when I first go into battle, tree rings triggers. I use tree rings, ebony flesh, and healing blossom also on Okado's recital. So when I first enter battle, I get armor. I get my I get 300 points of health because 10 layers at 30 points each. And of course, those start to peel off, and the health starts to slowly go down. But when you first enter battle, you get a big boost to your health. And then, of course, healing blossoms so that, 10 seconds later, if I've gotten injured or something, I start getting some healing. Because I don't use potions or anything else like that. Let's see, nothing there. Here are the spells that we used. I chose to use a mod that is cold fire spells. Excuse me. And basically cold fire spells, I chose them because I wanted something that had to do with like her crying and wailing and stuff. So basically these are like her tears manifested as cold fire. It's fire, but it's like ice cold because she's a ghost, so it'd be cold because she's dead and she's crying, and they got the blue color, so it'd be like tears and stuff. So that's why I chose these cold fire spells, because I figured because of the look of it and stuff that it could be role played or headcanoned basically that these are her tears manifested into spells. So we are using Incinerate as a cold blast. It's a blast of cold fire that does 380 points of damage. Targets on fire take extra damage. I use that when I'm fighting against dragons, so I can dual wield this and get a lot of damage onto them right away to get them under the half health. All these cold fire spells, they ignore fire resistance, if I recall correctly, they seem to. So yeah, Incinerate is going to be just like Incinerate regular spell, but it's cold fire. Cold fire fireball I use in the right hand, and it's a cold fire explosion just like fireball, but it does 253 points of damage in a 15-foot radius. Targets on fire take extra damage. So that's what I have in my right hand, and then in the left hand I use Cold Flames Advanced, and that's basically like the flame spell and the Wall of Flames combined into one spell. So it's a spray of cold fire that does 126 points of damage per second, and it can be used to make a wall of cold fire. So it's kind of like those two spells combined, and I have that one in my left hand. So what I'll usually do a lot of times is I'll hit them with the Drain Vitality, and that'll start slowly ticking off all three of their attributes, and then I'll throw some cold fire on them, and then as soon as their health gets below half, I'll just hit them with Wail of the Banshee and just instantly kill everything. Yeah, I think that's about it. Um, Okado's recital, of course, we went over that. Face light, that just gives her, light to her face, and ebony flesh. So yeah, that's all of those. I think that's probably everything. That's equipment, spells, powers for build, and we need to go over the skills. Let's see. So of course, for your spells, your main thing is going to be destruction. And you can see I didn't really do a whole lot, like going up into the fire branch here. I have 15 skill points because there's not many things that you're invested into for this build. But of course, she keeps gaining levels and stuff. And you can see my destruction is already up to 155. But I just don't really have anything to spend skill points on. And if you want to do more damage with your cold fire spells, just start specking into the fire tree here. But like I said, what I wanted, for my playthrough and what I think is really fun and stuff, is to just be able to do just enough damage to get that health under half so that you can will the banshee, because she's like a banshee. She's, that's like her signature move is screaming and crying, and it kills things. So you take 2 out of 2 out of destruction mastery, which destruction spells cost 50% less, which we don't care, and they are 5% more powerful per level of destruction. I chose dual casting just for the be able to dual cast incinerate against a dragon. Forces of nature you're not going to need because you don't need less cost of your magicka spells. But robe of the magi, because you're not wearing any kind of armor, your destruction spells are 30% more powerful. And over here on the rune stuff, I did those because I wanted to try out the cold fire rune, but it just didn't seem to suit her. I like the more of the flame look and stuff because, like I said, it could be these are her tears manifested into fire, so they're cold fire tears basically. So throwing down a rune didn't really seem to suit. So I ditched using runes, but that's why I was spec'd into the rune there. You won't spec into that unless you want to use the rune. I wouldn't suggest using it, but so you're just going to only spec into those 4 skills. Alteration, you're going to take 2 out of 2 alteration mastery, cast alteration spells for 50% less magicka, and alteration spells last 1% longer per level of alteration. Mage armor is going to be 3 out of 3. Protection spells like stone flesh are 200% stronger if not wearing armor. So we're going to have 300 armor with ebony flesh. Energy shield, if wearing robes and no light or heavy armor, it reduces incoming attack and elemental damage by 35%, but you lose magicka equal to amount of health lost. The damage reduction gradually diminishes as magicka falls below half. The energy shield is disabled when your hands are lowered. And of course, because we're Vancian, our magicka never drops unless we run out of spells. And so that means we have 100% of the time we have energy shield. And of course, Geomancer, if wearing robes and no light or heavy armor, you take 30% less damage from attacks while you're casting or concentrating on a spell, or charging and concentrating on a spell. So again, those are all things to keep us from taking so much damage, even though we only have 300 armor rating. And we have that enchantment that does the same thing. So if you are casting a spell, which would be the cold fire flames, that'll be channeling. You'll be taking a lot less damage. Vancian magic, cast magic like the wizards of old. Your next 20 spells do not use magicka and are twice as effective. When you run out of spells, you are unable to cast spells until you rest by sleeping at an inn or in your home. Quadratic wizard, whenever you recharge your Vancian magic spells, you gain 1 additional Vancian magic spell for each 10 points of base magicka, and you saw that I had 45. You will get 45 if you have 250 magicka. So you see I have 255. So at 250 magicka, you'll get 45 spells. At 300 magicka, you will get 50 spells. So I would suggest getting it somewhere in between those two. So invest 250 to 300 points into magicka so that you'll have between 45 and 50 spells. And then just put everything else into health. And that's all you got to do for your attributes. Dungeon Master, whenever you recharge your fancy and magic spells, you may choose less or more spells in exchange for increased or decreased spell effectiveness, and or choose one of 3 meta magic enhancements. Your choice remains in effect until your next rest. Um, Alter self resistances. You can choose 2, and I chose I chose fire and shock to get the resistance to those 2 increased. The alter self attributes, I threw that into stamina, so I have 50 more points of stamina, and that's why you saw that my stamina is at 155. Okay, and then nullifier, you radiate a dampening field preventing enemies within 25 feet from regenerating magicka or stamina. So that just helps with mages and stuff like that from generating magicka whenever they deplete their magicka. If they're within a certain radius of you, they can't regenerate magicka. Enchanting mastery, you're going to take, well, 2 out of 2. New enchantments are 40% stronger. Gem dust, again, you can choose a flawless gem, and whenever you crush it, whenever you're enchanting, whatever you choose, like diamond is for jewelry and stuff like that, your enchantments are 25% stronger when placed upon an item or type corresponding to the gem. So that's just to bump it up. I also have to go over something I just remembered here about enchanting with your gear. Regalia, new enchantments placed upon robes, circlets, hoods, or necklaces are 30% stronger. That's why I chose the necklace to put 3 on, so that I would have 30% stronger. Twin enchantment is pretty self-explanatory. You just put 2 enchantments on the 1 item. Arcane Nexus, you spend 2,500 gold to upgrade an arcane enchanter to turn it into a nexus, and then anything enchanted at that nexus is 25% stronger. And of course, miracle, one time you can enchant 3 enchantments onto 1 item 1 time. And if you were to legendary enchanting and bring it up to 100 again, you will not be able to take miracle again. So you cannot do that and enchant 3 enchantments onto all of your gear. It can only be 1 gear, once per playthrough, basically. So yeah, that's all of the enchanting. We'll go over that thing I said after we're done with the rest of the skills here. And then the only other thing you're going to do is speech, which is take 1 out of 2 just to move up, and you're going to take all of these here, if I can get on it, for reducing and buffing up your shouts, is what all of these are for right here. This one right here is a 50% chance to reduce it to 3 seconds, and then with any enchantments that you add, you can really start getting your chance to reduce your shout to 3 seconds really close to 100% of the time. Yeah, it's just the Hurricane Force, Doom of War, and then Merciless Storm. I would definitely recommend you take it for this build, because again, you really need to try to keep your shouts off of cooldown as much as you possibly can. And with Merciless Storm and the book that you get from Thunderchild, Unyielding Storm, which does the same thing, both of them just instantly refresh your cooldown rate once a day. And that's it for the enchantments. You can see you can see I have 15 power points, because you don't really put enchantments into much of anything at all, or skill points, I mean. Okay, so what I wanted to go over before I forget about in the enchanting tree. Okay, now the enchantment that gives you the ghost effect, what that does is that comes from a mod, and basically there's 3 different things you can do. It can be like phantom, ghost, or whatever. There's 3 different things, and there are 3 different colors. One is the blue color, one is a purple color, and one is red, and they all give you that ghost effect. Now excuse me, on the mod page, it says that you're supposed to be able to disenchant any of these pieces of equipment and then put that enchantment onto a piece of gear, and it'll give you that ghost effect. And that is what it does, but I have not been able to find one piece of gear that you can enchant with that enchantment. I've tried it on clothing, I've tried it on light armor, heavy armor, gloves, gauntlets, boots, sandals, rings, necklaces, and then beyond that stuff, I've tried it on different types of modded stuff like nose rings, belly button rings, earrings, labia rings. I have tried everything I could possibly find that would actually let me put that enchantment onto, and it would not let me put the enchantment onto anything. So what I had to do is, there's another mod that basically it's called Enchant Anything or something like that, and it basically lets you put any enchantment on any piece of gear. And then that is how I was able to put that enchantment on something. So there's something wrong with his mod where he says you should be able to put the enchantment on anything, but you can't put it on anything without another mod that lets you enchant anything. So what I wanted to go over with is whenever you run that mod that lets you enchant anything, all of these things right here, Gem Dust, Regalia, and Miracle, and Arcane Nexus, they do not count. So basically, if you're running the mod that lets you enchant anything, all enchantments are going to be the same percentage no matter what they're on. So if you crush a Gem Dust to buff up, like say you crush a diamond to get your jewelry enchantment higher, it's not going to work. It's still going to be that base enchantment amount. If you put it on a robe, you're not going to get the 30% stronger on your robe. It's going to be that base thing. So once you install that mod that lets you enchant anything, all your enchantments are going to be base. So this is what you need to do, is you get your enchantment up here to 100 so you can get all the way up to Miracle. Enchant all your gear that you need to enchant with, you know, your gems and your Regalia, your Arcane Nexus, so that you can get all your enchantments buffed up to where they need to be. And then what you do is you save your game, quit your game, go into whatever you're using, Nexus Mod Manager, Mod Organizer 2. I use MO2, Mod Organizer 2. Whatever you're using, just go into that, and then turn on the Enchant Anything mod. Then come back into your game and put that enchantment that gives you the ghost effect on something. I just put it on a nose ring, you know, just something random like that I didn't enchant, because you can't enchant those nose rings normally. So after I got all my enchantments done, then I saved my game, quit my game, turned that mod on, came back into the game, and then I enchanted that ghost effect enchantment onto the nose ring. That way all my enchantments would have the buff from Gem Dust, Regalia, Arcane Nexus, and all that. Because if you have that mod that lets you enchant anything running, you will not get any of these perks. Your enchantments will just be the base level that you would get. So that's how you have to do it with those different mods. I hope that was understandable on how you have to do that. Because for whatever reason, his mod that gives you the ghost effect, it cannot get put on anything. And I tried everything. It couldn't go on anything until I ran that mod that lets you put anything onto anything. But once you run that mod, you don't get any buffs from any of your enchanting skill, the enchanting tree. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and jump into do a little bit of dungeon crawling here, so you can see how the build works out. I think I went over everything there. We went over her looks, the gear, enchantments, the racials, the worshiper, lesser powers, greater powers, skills. So yeah, that should be everything. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna go ahead and meditate real quick. You can see I got a 157% favor with Molag Bal, and I'm gonna go ahead and turn that on so I can see. You can see that as soon as you're gonna see as soon as I have my armor come up, it'll get rid of the bluishness.
Now ain't this a surprise?
And that was Wail of the Banshee. That's what that's the thing that just kills them once they're under half health. You can see that as long as I am casting a spell, I don't take very much damage. Now, granted, you got to be careful. But I guess that other guy died. Okay. But you can see now I've lost that blue aura effect around me, and she's just got that clearish look to her. And the other blue is the flesh spell, and that would go away also once your flesh spell goes away, but you still keep this invisible look without the normal Skyrim blue ghost look. So that was a really nice side effect for this build that I was really happy with.
I don't know how you made it.
I guess I'll show you what that kidnapping is. See right there, you hit the activation button on them, and I can choose here Molag Bal dragged to oblivion.
Like the bite of a flea.
And he just gets sucked into oblivion. Now to Coldarbour. Now if I was to go and meditate, it's gonna make me a liar, because I've done that before, and it gave me his stuff. It just didn't say. So I got his fur bracers, his fur shoes, hide. Then I got the dwarven battle axe that he had. So you can see that's how you would get the gear that they had on them. So let me get my other stuff back on here. Now we're going to start running into the automatons. So I'm going to have to start using the Soul Tear now, because again, none of her normal spells really do anything against automatons. And I am running, you can see I'm on legendary, and I'm running Revenge of the Enemies and Wildcat. So the difficulty's really up there, and automatons are pretty tough, when you're running those mods. So you can do damage with your fire spells. It will damage them, but it takes quite a while, and you can't Will of the Banshee them. So I find that Soul Tear does a pretty good job of doing a lot of damage. That guy's got some major spell absorption going there. You gotta watch those fireballs that those guys throw out, because they will tear you up almost instantly. Yeah, they throw out some kind of weird fireball thing. Man, do those things hurt. You can see, even like I said, the dwarven stuff, the Dwemer automaton things, they are probably the toughest things for this build. And with Soul Tear, you can still get through them fairly easily. I may die here in this dungeon, but so far it's going pretty well. We will get to some more like actual organic enemies. Oh, I missed him. What was I saying? Oh, we'll get to some actual organic enemies, and you can see how she does a lot better against them. But we're doing all right against mechanical stuff. You can see how much absorption those guys have, though. It's like that weird swirling vortex thing is that they are absorbing that stuff. The Falmer may be a bit of a problem too. Again, with Revenge of the Enemies and stuff, they are pretty tough, and all of them can go invisible, and you just don't have any clue where they're at. So they're pretty tough. Draugr is very easy with this build because of the fact that you're using cold fire. They get melted by fire really bad. So let's see, we need our light back again. Let me save here before we get to Falmer, just in case I do die. I shouldn't... Whoa, he was right there. Usually they're way down there. What I want to do is show that if we're close enough here, the Soul Burst, what it can do. If I can get this guy to follow me, I thought there was one over there. Yeah, there he is. Get him to follow me over here to this one. I don't know where he went. There, see, he was freaking invisible. Get over here, dude. Oh, that Warmonger didn't take very much damage from that, did he? That Soul Burst does a lot of damage against humans. I've never tried it against Falmer. I don't even see where that person's at. That's what I was thinking. Where in the earth? It makes Falmer really difficult because you never... There they are. You never know where they're at because they're always invisible. But I love the extra challenge. Yeah, the Soul Burst does a lot of damage against human enemies, I noticed. And when you watched from the beginning of this, when it was going through the story of La Llorona, I had triggered that during that, and you saw all those enemies just fall down. I guess it doesn't work very well against Falmer. I've never tried it against Falmer before. So there's one more that we're going to have to go through, which is Evocation, which it has Firestorm, a 638 point cold fire explosion centered around the caster. Does more damage the closer to targets. So that's another one does that. So it's a radiating out explosion. And I have that one on Evocation. So we'll do that against, and it does a lot of damage even against automatons, against robots. I'm trying to remember what's coming up next. It's been a while since I've been through this dungeon. Oh, okay, so I know where we're at here. We're gonna need Soul Tear. So yeah, I think that's probably about it for which other skills we have to go over. Which one is this? Oh, okay. I believe it's this one right here. Yep. Okay, so this is where we got to take all the stuff out of the gears. So I'm going to see if I can get a bunch of them grouped up, and we'll do the evocation with Cold Fire Storm. So let's see. You need to follow me. You need to follow me. I guess that's all of them. Yeah, you can see that just dropped them pretty quick. But yeah, you can see that even without a whole bunch of points put into your skills, she's still really powerful. Oops, forgot this one. Yeah, she's still really powerful. And she's really tough too. She can take a beating. So she is a lot of fun to play. I think that's all of them. But we're gonna have, let's see, this guy coming up. But yeah, you can't use well on the Banshee of them, even like this right here, because the robots don't get affected by it. So I think that thing had said I had 10 spells left, so hopefully we don't run out. I mean, I could go and sleep. I'm using the Haven bag, so I could just jump in there and sleep right now, but I think this is the last of it right here. So let me save this. And we'll go ahead and get these guys nuked in here. Whoa! Man, these spiders are taking a beating, aren't they? We've got to be low on spells. Just out of curiosity. About 5 left, maybe? 4? 7 left.
Have to say, that's what, your third? All right, only 1 left to go. I'll meet you there.
All right. Well, if this guy's got anything on him. I don't even think I picked up the... Yeah, I did pick up the Ethereum shard, didn't I? Yeah. Let's see. If let me just advance this a bit so we can... Yeah, I can show you that once the armor goes away, you can see that now she looks really transparent and like a ghost. She doesn't have that blue look like Skyrim ghosts. Oh, that was another thing. If you look at her feet, how it's blue on the bottom. Let me back that off a little bit. See that? What I did there was I gave her tattoos on the bottom of her feet. They are actually wolf pads. I don't know how I could show you that, but they're just a wolf pad tattoo. But you could put anything down there for tattoos and give it the glow effect. And the reason why I suggest doing that is because in it wasn't in this dungeon because this dungeon's not dark, but like if you're outside and it's really dark, or if you're in a dungeon that's really dark, you can see how transparent she is. It's really hard to see where you're at. So if you give her the blue on the bottom, or if you want to do any color, but I figured the blue looked the best and it fit the theme to be blue like that because of like the cold fire and stuff. If you do that, you can see where your character is actually at. So that was another thing. I'm glad I just remembered that yeah, if you give her some kind of tattoo down there and you give, when you're using race menu, you can see here it's pretty dark, but when you're running, you lose that white smoky effect, so you don't really see where you're at. So if you have that blue, you can see where your character is. Oops, wrong one. I couldn't even see where the lever was at. But yeah, just give her something down there that glows, a glowing tattoo or whatever, so that you can see where you're at. If you're not using anything that darkens up stuff, then you don't really need to do that. But I use vivid weathers and all that stuff to try to, I make my nighttime very dark at night. And of course, this dungeon, because it's Dwemer, it's got all the lights in it, it's not too dark, but my dungeons are very dark as well. So it is quite hard to see where your character's actually at. So, is that the right lever? Yeah. Yeah, you can see it's not too dark out here yet, but you can definitely see where that light that looks like a flashlight, that's the face light. But yeah, you can see that I can actually see my character a lot better with that. And of course, with the cushion, you don't have to worry about fall damage. And with the thing to give you the ghost effect, it comes with this horse right here also, the phantasmal steed. I'll show you where you go to get the equipment if you don't want to use add item menu. When you install the mod, I really wish it didn't do this because it messes up the way this area looks, in my opinion. But there's no way to just add the equipment without adding this. But if you're not using add item menu and you want to get the gear so that you can get the ghost effect, this is where you get it at. It's right there at Whiterun. So, oops, wrong way. So yeah, here's the Whiterun stables. Here's your the carriage. It's right here. You can see how I said it doesn't really suit. It's kind of yeah, it sticks out like a sore thumb. But you could use this guy for a follower.
Yes.
And the horse is standing like right here. But in these coffins, you got poltergeist. So you just take any of this equipment right here. Like you could take off that if you want the red effect. The blue, which the one I'm using is the phantom, you would just take that out. And then the purple is right here is wraith. And if you wanted to be a purple ghost, you would just pull that out. And then, like I said, when you disenchant that, you're supposed to be able to stick that enchantment on anything, but was not able to find anything that you could stick the enchantment onto. So something's buggy about the mod right there. But yeah, we already went over that, so we don't need to go over it again on how to get that enchantment on there. If you're not using a flesh spell, then you will always have that.
I've been looking for you.
Shut up, dude.
Looks like that's it. Got to go.
You would, if you're not using the ebony flesh or any kind of flesh spell, then you would have the blue look like that, like a normal Skyrim ghost, until the flesh spell goes off. I could show you what the other ones look like just by sticking this gear on there. That's gonna be blue the same. If you wanted to be a red ghost, there's the red. And if you wanted to be a purple ghost, there's the purple. But I just chose the blue, but because of the fact that when you use a flesh spell, once that flesh spell goes off, whoops, I didn't even pick it. She loses that blue thing, which I really like, because now she's just like this see-through ghost. You can see right through her everywhere. She's very transparent. But you can see the ebony flesh blue hue. But once your flesh spell goes away, then yeah, you're really see-through, and it's really hard to see you. It's not too dark right now, but you can definitely see the bottom of my feet when I'm running. It's just to help me see where I'm at, and I would highly recommend doing it. But yeah, there's the build. This ended up being a lot longer than I hoped, but I wanted to cover everything and make sure everything was covered to help keep confusion and stuff down. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you give this build a try. She's a lot of fun. There's nobody hanging on the gallows right now. Nope. But yeah, there's La Llorona, my spin on the La Llorona tale in Skyrim. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in future episodes. Well guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please smash that like button and also consider hitting that subscribe button. Again, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in future episodes.